Welcome to Khanversations. I am Muqtedar Khan, your host. I'm a professor at the University of Delaware, and I have with me Professor David Redlawsk, who is running for the state representative for the 23rd district in the state of Delaware. He is a political science professor, and he is currently the chair of the Department of Political Science at the University of Delaware, which has produced people like Chris Christie, who's the governor of New Jersey, and Joe Biden, who's president of the United States, both of whom got their bachelor's degree at the University of Delaware. But in our department, the department that Dave Redlawsk is a chair of, Dave has had a very illustrious career in academia. He's not just an academic, he's an endowed chair professor, which very few academics make it in their lifetime, less than 10% professors all over the country. And he's a big name in political psychology. I think that should come in handy, Dave. He is an expert on understanding the role of emotions in elections. Plus, he's also perhaps the authority on Iowa caucuses. And he has been president of the Political Psychology Association, a world-renowned scholar. And now but what is also interesting is I made an infographic about Dave, so I'm going to share that with all of you and tell me if you are able to. So let me share that infographic with all of you. So it gives you an idea of the various aspects of his personality. Here it is. So this is the life and work of David Redlawsk. Is an academic leader. He's been the chair of the department for 10 years here at the University of Delaware. So he's used to dealing with issues, paperwork, budgets, how to get things done, how to allocate resources. So it's a pretty handy training grounds, I guess, for a legislature. He has shown academic leadership. Like I said, he's a Soles professor and chair. He has studied voter psychology, and he studied Iowa caucuses, and now he's running for the legislative candidacy here in 23rd district. So that is Dave Redlawsk. Dave, welcome to Khanversations.
Thanks for having me, Muqtedar.
So why are you running?
Well, a lot of people ask me that question. Honestly, I'm running because I think we are at a time where having somebody with the background that I have, the experience, the knowledge, would be really beneficial in Dover. And why this matters particularly to the 23rd RD is because we are the home of the one true college town, Newark, and the large university, the state university, the University of Delaware. And I have a pretty good understanding of both of those in terms of local government, the role it plays, how universities matter. And I think I'm positioned to address the issues that cross both of those areas for the 23rd RD. So there's a very local focus in terms of the university, the city, Newark being a livable, viable place in the long term, the university being a successful university for the state as a whole, an economic driver, a knowledge driver. And I think we're just at a time where the particular skills I have would be valuable in Dover.
Dave, one of the things that I do want to ask you is that you have been teaching local government, isn't it? That's the class you teach at the University of Delaware, and you also make sure that you are heavily engaged with the local politicians. You're part of the Democratic Party. I've seen you volunteer on election day from morning till evening. I mean, those are small things, but people don't understand that those are the building blocks of democracy. So at this moment, when people think that America's democracy is in peril, is it worth spending the golden years working in this environment where there's more partisanship, more anger, hatred, and less pleasures of enjoying democracy?
I think it is. And I thought a lot about that, to be honest. I've did politics in an earlier stage of my career. Partisan politics in a pretty tough environment in New Jersey. But it has gotten worse. There's no question about that, right? We have such intense negative partisanship these days with, it isn't so much that I love my side, it's how much I hate the other side. And that's a serious problem. But if we let that kind of thing keep people out of politics, then it's never going to get better. And what I think I bring to this, and why I want to do this even now, is because as a professor, one of the things you end up doing is talking and listening to people across all kinds of different divides, all kinds of different gulfs, whether it's our students, whether it's our colleagues, whether it's the public more generally. And you have to be able to not just talk and profess the way everybody thinks we do, but you have to be able to listen. You have to be able to pay attention to a lot of different perspectives. And as researchers, we have to pull together information from many sources, many perspectives, to try to find, I'll use that word, the truth, right? Which is what we're trying to do as researchers in our own little areas. So honestly, it is terrible right now. And you do worry about that. But I also think that if people who have the ability and the capabilities don't step forward, it doesn't get any better. And I'll say on top of it, I'm constantly telling my students to get engaged. This local government class is very much about teaching students the skills and the tools they need to become engaged in their communities, to understand how politics works, how power works, how communities work. And I'm always telling them to do that. And then I thought, we're at a moment where I'm going to be stepping now as the department chair. I have a little more flexibility in my life. I'm telling them to get involved. I should do it too. I should walk the walk right now, to use that tired old cliche, because it's really meaningful. It's important to get out there and do something.
I actually do the opposite. I tell my students that engage in policy, stay out of politics. The solutions.
Well, I understand, right? But somebody has to do the politics too.
Yes, I know.
Right?
So this is a difficult question. Is it your desire to serve which is motivating you to join politics? So then, are you in search of issues, or are there any issues that are tilting the balance in favor of saying, oh my God, if I don't do this, these issues will not be affected? So the issues which are pushing you, so are there any such issues? And if they are, what are they?
I think in some sense, right, the issues, we're running in a Democrat primary, and we're very focused on the kinds of issues that Democrats have been talking about at this point, right? And the public's been talking about. So in Newcastle County in particular, education, and especially the, pre-college education, pre-K through 12. We have serious issues with how we fund education in this state. We have serious issues with inequity in this state. And in Newcastle County, we particularly have challenges with respect to how the districts are divided up. I think that's a driving force for me. I think we're on the right track to improving the funding mechanism. I think things are getting there, but there's more to do. The Reading Consortium has made some recommendation with regards to consolidating school districts. I think that's going in the right direction. I will admit I need to know more of the detail about it, but we need a system for our kids where it isn't just if you're lucky enough to go to a charter school that you get a top-notch education. You should get a top-notch education in any of our public schools. So that's driving me as an educator, right? That's just something I really care about in general. You put up just the screen from the website that lists some of the key things we're talking about. And some of them seem sort of esoteric, right? Defending democracy. What does the state legislature do? I know that's probably one of your questions. What can the state legislature do about defending democracy? And, we do that as a state by showing up, by being there, by being part of it, by making sure that state law protects our right to vote, constitutionally protects our right to vote. These are some of the things that are going to come up in the next legislature moving forward, constitutional amendments that protect our right to vote, that ensure that voters have access to the polls. Vote by mail, I'd love to see us move to something like same-day voter registration. I think even looking at implementing ranked choice voting as a way to improve the way democracy works, right? So when I think about protecting democracy and the state, I think about where the state has control, which is over the election process. Mm-hmm. And we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can there.
I think one of the lucky things that has happened to the US is that elections are a state function.
Yeah.
I mean, India just had one of its elections, and there the election is a federal function, and you can see how it opens up for dangerous manipulations from the federal government. You brought up this K to 12 education issue. I want to talk a little bit about it. Let me also be very frank. A few weeks after I moved to Delaware, my younger daughter won the lottery to Newark Charter School.
Yeah. Yep.
And because the younger one won, the elder one also got into Newark Charter. If Rumi had won, then we would not have we would have been anxious. And the bus stops right here, right in front of my door. And believe me, this is the single most reason why I settled in Delaware. It took her 16 years to graduate high school. And so I've been here for 20 years. So the school was critical to settling in Delaware. There are lots of other things I like about Delaware. I say it's East Coast living at Midwest pricing. That is my favorite explanation. But I want to show you something. Delaware is the fourth richest state in the country, but Delaware is ranked 32 when it comes from K to 12 education. And to me, that is very shocking as to how one of the richest states in the country is doing so awfully when it comes to education. Not only that, because of the University of Delaware, which is also not many people know that, but Delawareans should know that we are a public Ivy. That is what we are. We are one of the public Ivies along with Berkeley and University of North Carolina and UCLA. So we are in the top 10% in the country when it comes to higher education. But K to 12, we are 32. And this is a blue state. Are Democrats to blame for that?
Yeah, actually, because Democrats have been in control for quite some time and nothing's really been done to seriously address these issues. I think we're seeing change now. We are seeing real efforts. I think there are two things that I believe are at the core of the problems. There are plenty of other issues, but one has to do with the history of Delaware and the history of Delaware schools and the deep racial divisions and even segregation. That's a long time ago formally, but reality is different, right? And the fact is that we don't treat our schools even-handedly. We have a 80-year-old funding system that does not send the money to where the kids who need the support services are. So the districts that have the biggest challenges, large percentages of students on free lunch, large percentage of students with, housing issues and other kinds of economic problems, don't get the resources that are needed to create the wraparound services that are important in those schools. And so that system, called the unit system, doesn't really work in the modern world. I said it's 80 years old. That is changing, and it looks like it's moving through the legislature so that we will move to a hybrid system where there will still be a unit piece that has to do with how many students you have and how many teachers and what have you. But there will be the part that will be a large part of the funding mechanism designed to send the money where the need actually is. That will help, right? Money does matter and it will help. But we also don't really invest in our schools enough. We're very proud of being a very low property tax state, particularly for being in the Northeast. When I did move here, we moved here from New Jersey, my property taxes dropped by 70% coming to Delaware. There are repercussions of that, right? You can't fund schools if you're not willing to pay the bill. And I don't think we need massive property tax increases necessarily, but we need to think more carefully about, where the resources are and how to get the resources we need. One of the things that's going to happen in some of these plans having to do with the districts in Newcastle County and having to do with this funding mechanism is that by moving the funding mechanism, some schools will get less funding unless there's a hold harmless provision. And so part of the intent is to provide necessary additional funding to ensure that as resources shift to where they're needed more, right, no school suffers unduly from that shift. But it's a very complex process, and it needs political will in Dover to make happen. But so to kind of sum this up, right, our history, our problem, it's not just money, it's also, designing a system that frankly, particularly in Newcastle County, is as segregated as when the schools were truly segregated schools by law, right? We're sending Christina School District is split so that part of it is in Wilmington, part of it surrounds Newark. The kids in Wilmington don't have a high school in Wilmington. They are bused 10 miles from their homes. They're coming out of communities that don't have resources. Parents can't easily follow them for parent-teacher conferences, for supporting them in extracurriculars. It's just a really substantial problem that has come because we've created a system for haves and have-nots. But to be honest, as you said, the haves in most cases, are a matter of luck, right? You got in because, your oldest child got drawn in, and then your younger child was able to follow along. You were lucky. Your family was lucky. Many others weren't, right?
No doubt about it. It was better education than most private schools. So we are looking at me benefiting by, say, $100,000 a year. Like if the education is better than St. Andrews, that's $100K a year for 16 years.
Yeah. And why can't we work to make sure that every parent can send their kid to the best possible school, and that best possible school, we would hope, would be their local public school, right? Their community school. I don't think we should be getting rid of the charters. You don't destroy what is there, but I do think we've got to put the focus back on the traditional public schools. That's the only way to solve this problem in the end.
So let me share something with you, Dave, that will tell you that the problem is not just schooling. You have another problem that's coming down the pike. And what I'm sharing with you now is after doing some research about the situation in Delaware, I identified 3 of Delaware's major problems, the most important problems. And you mentioned 2 of them. So the number one, if you look at number 2, it's called a replacement crisis and a demographic cliff, which demographic cliff means very simply that the population is dropping. And one of the problems we are going to have is there are going to be no high school age kids to go to high school, and there will be no 18-year-olds coming to University of Delaware. So we'll have to go and fetch students from other parts of the country. That is one problem that we have, which we have to deal with. And there is a bit of data I want to share with you, which will shock you. It seems that for every 1 job we are creating, we are losing 15 through retirement. We are the fourth oldest state in the
Right.
country. If you look at the middle, this is what it's saying, 15 retirees, one person. So we don't have young people to get into jobs. We will have the same problem in high schools, which means we will have to have fewer schools, perhaps. Maybe one or two universities will have to shut down. But if you look at the other problem that we have is this property tax issue, the volatility, which is what you have tied. I mean, you have hinted at perhaps increasing taxes in order to pay for the schools. We may not have students. And this is a very tricky situation of raising property taxes. How are we going to deal with that?
It absolutely is, and you can't just do this all at once. The reassessment that was statewide by court order, it shouldn't have been 40 years for reassessment, right? These things should be happening regularly, and they will going forward. But it was botched. It was particularly botched in Newcastle County in terms of the processes and clearly how properties were actually assessed. So we've ended up with a lot of uncertainty, a lot of unknowns, strange things happening with the taxes. An example, my own house, my property taxes declined, and they should not have gone down, right? They were already, like I said, not bad, but they actually went down with this reassessment. That makes no sense to me. But let me shift this a moment, because the other thing on your slide had to do with the income tax.
Yeah.
And so we don't have to do all of this through property tax, right? And we shouldn't do all of this through property tax. We have, we do not have a very progressive income tax system here in Delaware. People who make $1 million a year or $10 million a year pay the same rate as people who make $60,000 a year, right? That should not be. We need to add additional brackets at the higher end and raise the rates on those brackets. Many of us who are professors would probably be paying a little bit more, but I think people who are in the position to pay more should be paying more. The real impact, of course, would be at the very high end. And I think that absolutely needs to be done. But as a part of that, we ought to be able to, and this will take some work and understanding the numbers in the end, but we ought to be able to take the lower part of the income tax system, people making, say, under $20,000, and they're not paying a very high rate right now, but paying even $300, $500 for income tax is difficult when you can't make the rent and you can't pay for the groceries and your utility bills are out of play. I think folks at the very lower end of the brackets who are trying to get by, we should be trying to lower the taxes there. We should be raising them on the people who can afford to pay it. And we ought to be able to do that in a way where revenues pick up. I know there's a lot of, the millionaires will leave, they'll all go somewhere else because we're taxing them. I don't think it's that simple, right? I mean, a few people might leave, but in fact, if you look around this state, our neighboring states, Pennsylvania is different because as a flat rate, there are basically no deductions. You just pay this flat rate of 3 and something percent, no matter what. So it's a non-progressive system entirely. But New Jersey, for example, their top end bracket is 10.5%, roughly 10.5%. So ours is around 6. There's no reason we can't go up. We don't have to go to New Jersey levels, but we can find a new balance. We can find a more progressive tax system. And I think that will help as well, because in the end, back to the schools, right? To do anything with the school funding that's effective, we are going to need the resources to do it. Now, I'm going to come back to your specific question also about there are no young people, right? Because there is real truth to that. Sitting as a department chair in a university, we're seeing that with the May 1st deadline having passed for students to declare where they're going to school, right? It has been an incredibly challenging admissions cycle, and it's only going to get worse. So we are now, as a university, competing with universities at places we've never had to before. I heard, and I didn't verify this, so it might not be true, but that the SUNY system is now offering in-state tuition to Pennsylvanians, right? So the New York system reaching out to bring Pennsylvanians to New York schools, because it's not just Delaware where there aren't kids, right? The East Coast in general has this demographic cliff. I can't solve that one directly, but I do think we are in better shape if those at the top of the economic ladder are doing more to support the communities as a whole, more to support the state as a whole. And I think that becomes an important part. We are getting very retiree heavy, and I'm actually not surprised to learn that we're the fourth oldest state now, because we're incredibly attractive to retirees, right? The beach towns are very attractive. Our system doesn't tax pensions the same way as our surrounding states do. There's lots of reason to move to Delaware. We have a pretty good climate. It's a great place to live. So we're very attractive. But of course, again, the challenge is that comes with service needs that we have to find ways to support. And it's not easy. And I won't even pretend I necessarily have all the answers. That would be lying. But I do think I'm in the position to understand these things and to work with those who know more to figure out where we go.
One of the strange things is, for the last 10, 15 years, one of the things that has kept all universities thriving have been international students paying full tuition.
Yes.
And we have now become I don't advise people, I have advised our own grad students who have got admissions in UK. I say, do not say no to UK universities until you get a visa from the US. But even then, I would think twice really to come to the US at this time, because of the way we are treating students. And we are having a population decline, literally a population crisis. And then we are still talking about mass deportations. I really don't know what to say.
It makes no sense, Muqtedar. It makes no sense whatsoever. And we certainly see this at the university, right? We've had fantastic graduate student applicants who we've accepted who could not come just because the federal administration just decided one day, the president just decided one day, you can't travel if you're from this country. I mean, it's an insane way to run a country. It's an insane way to deal with, as you say, the demographics across the entire country are such that we need to be open to folks coming here. And we've always been a beacon for the world, right? I agree with you right now. If I had, potential students who were in other countries, I'd be sort of saying the same thing. Think about alternatives until this administration is done, right? I have hope. Right. I have hope that we'll turn this around someday.
I was looking at the University of Delaware has a nice resort place in Lewis, the Worden Center, where you can have a conference. Right. I was planning a conference for that place, and I was looking at the cost of it. And for bringing in 20 people from all over the world, it was like a $50,000 deal. So I was trying to see if I could raise the money. And then suddenly the participants potentially said, no, you can't have it in the US because I can't get visa. I have to deposit money to get visa and stuff. So now I'm using AI to find the cheapest place for all the people who are willing to participate so that we can all go there. And that is loss of business to the US.
It's a loss of business. It's a loss of talent in the long run, right? It's a loss it's a tremendous loss. And in different roles, you mentioned the International Society of Political Psychology. We are not coming back to the United States anytime soon, right? Our 1,000-person meeting, we are going to other countries because too many of our members can't get visas to the United States as scholars, as to come talk about our research, to talk about our understanding of political behavior, human behavior, and we can't do it. And that just makes so little sense to me right now. Again, my hope is this will change at some point. It is beyond, of course, the state level when we talk about immigration, for example. But Delaware itself can continue to try to be a welcoming place, right? We are continuing, and I think the The governor's office, the legislature that we have now are all committed to keeping Delaware as welcoming a place as possible. All right, not just for domestic people moving to the beach, but for international people looking for opportunity. Because we do have opportunity. And part of that, by the way, is the university and the idea that the university can be a strong economic driver as we can continue to build out, tech public private partnerships, for example, other kinds of ways that we leverage the strengths we have as a university and the strengths we have in this state is really a great place to live.
No, it is. It is a wonderful place, no doubt about it. And I'm going to share with you some information. The state of Delaware is a contrarian state. I just discovered that, and I'm quite partly amused and partly worried about certain aspects. And I want to share that with you, and perhaps those who are watching might also find it interesting. Some of the facts about our state. So I want you to ignore the left side. The left side that you're seeing is all sources. So,
Right.
By habit, I'm citing.
Yes, well,
So
what we
left
do.
are the sources about the data that I have on Delaware, and the right are the sources for
Yep.
the data I have on the country. But if you look at Delaware, it is the fourth richest state in the world, in the US, after New York, New Jersey, and Massachusetts. These are the three richest states. We are richer than California. And by that, I mean per capita income of
Right.
100,000 and 11,000. The national average is 75,000. So you can see how much richer than average America we are in terms of per capita income. But our schools are ranked 32, as I pointed out. But there's something else that I want you to look at, which is that if you look at the quality of hospital care, here it says healthcare, but the quality of hospitals, Delaware is number one in the whole country. That means Christiana Hospital is really a very good hospital, but our life expectancy is below average.
Yeah.
How is that? Especially now that we have retirees coming into Delaware, that means we are having. It doesn't make sense to me, right? It means that children are dying more in Delaware than elsewhere in the country.
Yeah, I mean, look, having a high quality hospital system doesn't really say anything about what supports we have for people throughout the life cycle, right? And one of the very serious challenges we have in healthcare here is primary care. It's nearly impossible to get in as a new patient to a primary care physician. It's, we don't have enough. The reimbursement rates that they get aren't high enough. The costs of running those kinds of primary care operations continue to skyrocket. And so that's, I think, the core of that contradiction, right? We have a great hospital system. There's no question about that. And so if you get sick, right, if you get an acute illness, you've got a place to go. But what if you're dealing with chronic issues, right, where you need a regular physician, you need somebody who can see you regularly, can spend time with you, can help you through this? That's much, much more difficult. And she's understands that I talk about this. My wife Alicia has an ongoing autoimmune system issue. Finding the kind of regular primary care that she needs has literally been impossible. She had recently had a line on a new primary care physician. She went to the office only to find that person is leaving. So there was no point in even having the appointment because the idea was to be there, long term. This is a crisis, and it's a difficult one. It's very hard for the state to solve these kinds of things as well. But there are things the state can do, and the governor's put forward a bill to adjust the way reimbursements are done, to adjust the way the funding is done from the state in terms of state plans. And I think that will help. But, we have to figure out how we make this attractive for more physicians and other primary care providers. I want to point out that in my case, I use the University of Delaware's nurse managed primary care for my own primary care. These are highly educated nurses, right? So not physicians, highly educated nurses who understand the issues of primary care, can prescribe medicine when it's necessary, can do all of the normal things that I would get from a primary care physician. And honestly, they, I think, spend more time with me, but they're getting highly stressed as well, right? Because again, the demand is much higher than the available supply of people to work in that area.
As you are aware that I had fallen ill after after my international travels, and I have this is my standard line when I seek appointments with doctors or specialists. That will be 3 days after my wake. So, so I'll be dead by the time I get to see the doctor. And 6 months, 3 months, you miss one appointment with your cardiologist, you're not getting another one for the next 6 months. And I don't know how that works, but I want you to look at a little bit of this data on the left. For example, unemployment, we are nearly 1% more than the national average, 5.4. If you look at inflation, we have high inflation. So I am not able to understand bad schools, bad health numbers, bad on unemployment, bad on inflation. I mean, if someone showed me this report card, I would say this state is badly governed.
Yeah. And I think I honestly come back to, again, that we don't demand enough of those who are economically positioned to do something. I mean, in the sense of our tax system, in the sense of how we do this, we are, of course, highly reliant on funds that come in through the corporate structures that we have, and our the fact that so many companies are domiciled in Delaware. But it's really hard to solve the problems of a community without everybody in the community participating. And by everybody, I mean those at the higher end of the income scales, right? I think I have no problem with saying, I need to pay a little bit more in state taxes because I want the kind of community that is livable, that is, viable, that is going to last. And I need to be part of that process. This
is like an American problem. We need more money, but maybe we need better governance. Maybe we need better leaders with the same amount of money.
Not everything is done perfectly, right? I mean, these are all human endeavors. There are mistakes. There are errors. There is waste. There's no question about any of that, right? But I still don't think that's the core of the problem. I think, for example, again, in education, the core of the problem is how the funds are distributed. We need some more funding, but we mostly need to change how the funds are distributed. I think in employment, I'm not sure what to make of those numbers, the unemployment numbers. I think they're a little wonky at the moment. We're a small state, so large changes can happen very easily with very few actual people being affected. Even so, our unemployment rate should not be substantially higher than the federal rate, right? And I think that I suspect that has something to do with, you saw a disjuncture between being a wealthy state and yet higher unemployment. Remember that those statistics, as you well know, are also skewed, right, by people, right, by the nature of the way incomes flow and the way we calculate.
It could also be affected by the retirees also.
No question, right? Our retirees probably come in with more resources than most people if you're moving to the Delaware beaches, right?
No, some of them may not be retired and they are listed as unemployed. Even though they have retired, I think
too. I mean, the labor force participation number is a better indicator than unemployment, and it's also not as good as
it's not good. It's 59%. The country is 61%.
There it is very much affected by who is retired, right? Well, or who is retired early, because who would be in the labor force except that they've stepped away.
I mean, we are becoming the Florida of the Northeast, I think, in a way. Uh, so, Dave, what would be the first 2 or 3 things that you really like to act on and move on? I mean, these are good things to talk about, but I don't think you can impact inflation or unemployment. But what
They're
would be the
difficult,
things
right?
that,
They're
yeah, what
difficult.
would you really like to work on as soon as you
Yeah.
get sworn in January?
I want to work on the data center issues. We haven't even talked about that in this discussion, but there, there's an underlying problem here, which is we are in some ways attractive to these companies who want to build these gigantic, power hungry data centers, and we're attractive.
Water hungry. Power and water.
Yeah, power and water, and we're attractive because we don't tax them the way, for example, Virginia does. So we don't get revenue out of them the way Virginia does. So they're tired of paying in Virginia, so they're starting to look for other places. And we don't have the safeguards in place. We don't have the guardrails in place. The Coastal Zone Act is holding for now. It's one of the things that's stopping kind of one of the worst of these, but it's going to court, and it's unclear whether the basis of the hold will stand up in court, because it has to do with technicalities relating to fuel tanks that would fund, be the backup systems for when the power grid failed. So that can't be allowed apparently in the coastal zone. But I've talked to people about the Coastal Zone Act, and it appears to have some holes in it that have possibilities of being exploited. We need to tighten that up. We need to create a set of guardrails that potentially can allow development of centers like this if they don't draw off the public grid, if they don't create negative environmental impacts. I don't know if that's actually possible for these centers, but we need to set the stage for that. So that's
when
one.
you drive up and down Route 40, increasingly you're seeing people have solar fields. There are people with solar cells, right? So if these data centers are using solar energy, the problem is that because they are raising the cost of electricity for citizens, that is what it has. So we end up subsidizing the data centers.
Yeah, no, that's exactly
right. And the
right.
same with water supply, right? They're sucking in, they need a lot of water to cool. Actually, this morning, I was having a discussion on a different show with somebody who was talking about how there's a tremendous inflow of foreign direct investments in India. And I was looking at it, and the 2 biggest investments in the last 1 year have been Google and I think Amazon, which are building data centers in India. And I said, oh my God, it's going to kill your electricity bills and your water supplies. Basically, those are the 2 things. But if we block it, then it will go to India. See, so is that also a smart decision?
No, and that
so it doesn't generate employment. Right? There's not much employment at data centers. It's just
no, there's not, and that's one of the things, right? So there are certainly good construction jobs, and I understand, for example, the construction union, the building trades union supports this because there are good construction jobs, and those are tough to come by. So there is opportunity there, but it's just false to say that they are good long-term permanent jobs, right? That there's a significant number.
There's nothing long-term about those jobs. Once you build it, it's done.
No, exactly. And so, on balance, I'm not willing to give up the environment to create an untenable situation for the power grid and people's utility bills for even good short-term union jobs. I think this is important, but there are other things we ought to be doing. So one of them is the data centers. You asked a couple of things. Another is in some ways a simple one from my mind, but we'll see what happens. And that is, we've gone through the first leg of a constitutional amendment to protect reproductive rights and reproductive health care. We need this in the Delaware Constitution. To get into the Delaware Constitution, it has to pass next year with 2/3 majorities in both houses. And it's going to, that is something that I will be right on top of supporting, doing what I can for that. And a third thing that is very local focused, but I think is really important. So many things we could be talking about. The interaction, the relationship between the University of Delaware and the city of Newark and the state, right? UD is an economic driver for the state, but it's viewed in a lot of the state as, up there in Newcastle County, right? They don't really care about downstate other than the beach, other than Lewis, right? And I think that's changing.
You have a campus in Georgetown, right?
We do, right? But you wouldn't really know it. You wouldn't really understand that that's the University of Delaware. The university has failed at that. But I think we're positioned to do a lot better, to become much more of a statewide university. The city of Newark is unique in Delaware because of the college town and the university. The city of Newark is an economic driver here in northern Delaware, but the kinds of things that are going on in the city with the university could be economic drivers beyond northern Delaware, as the incubators, as we bring in new startups. But again, that requires partnership, and it all requires partnership with the state. So the future of this city, future of the 23rd RD, depends on the success of the University of Delaware, but it also depends on Newark envisioning a future. And I would like to be part of pulling together Newark, the university, the governor's office, other aspects of the state to think about what does this future look like.
It's like Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, it's so fundamentally critical for its development. But I do want to say something about University of Delaware. We are both employees of it and we don't want to badmouth it. But sometimes it feels as if UD is not serving Delaware. Our student bodies are mostly pulled in from the Northeast. It's like we have more New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey students, even Massachusetts students than Delawareans. Well, why not make University of Delaware a truly public university? Will that be not a good idea, and make a free college for everybody in Delaware? It's a small state. We are running out of 18-year-olds anyway. Why not make it free for the state and keep people in here?
Yeah. So part of our challenge is that we're a small state and we're a small population. So, there's a limited number of Delaware students who could even come to the University of Delaware, right? And much, take a look at Rutgers or take a look at Penn State, right? They have much bigger population bases to draw from, so they have much larger share of in-state students. That part we probably can't directly solve, right? There are just the students that there are. And at this point, any Delaware student who has the requisite record in high school and wants to come to the University of Delaware is going to be able to come to the University of Delaware. The in-state tuition, but also the discounting, right, the financial aid, it's all designed honestly to make it accessible. But college, of course, accessibility has become a problem for everybody, right? And that's another one of those big problems. I will note too that one unique thing about the university is its Associate in Arts program, which is a 2-year program in Wilmington, Georgetown, and Dover, where students who come to that through the Delaware Seed Grants basically do come free. They get their associate's degree. If they complete the associate's degree, they get to automatically come to the Newark campus, and if they desire, to complete a bachelor's degree. But many of them move into good jobs with the associate's degree, right? So there are opportunities that we're providing that I think a lot of people don't necessarily know about. But it doesn't mean we're doing everything we need to do. We need better pipelines, as we need better programs so that kids who might be first generation, nobody in the family's ever been to college, know something about the university, know something about their opportunities. And we don't do as good a job at that at this point. But it's also worth noting, not everyone needs to go to a university, right? We have Del Tech, we have the Votex, we have all kinds of opportunities that, quite frankly, in the age of AI, may turn out to be fairly remunerative, lucrative jobs, right? You still need a plumber. AI isn't going to fix those pipes. So for many Delawareans, that's a path. Del State is a path, right? We have multiple paths, but I don't know how well we communicate that to potential students.
So you do have a great agenda on your hands, Dave, and I wish you all the best with your next adventure in your life. But I'm glad that you are part of the pool, and you will bring the wisdom and knowledge of all your decades of service in academia. But not only that, you have been actually in academic leadership, right? So you've directed centers and you've been the chair. So you actually have direct management experience.
Yep.
And I think that's one important part. So I wish you all the best. And thank you very much for coming and joining me on Khanversations.
Thanks very much, Muqtedar. It was great talking with you.
Thank you.